Hey guys, it's Alyssa with Stretchly, and I am coming on with another video today. And I realized in my last video I didn't really explain why we foam roll. And if you've never been to Stretchly or had us explain your homework to you, you may not understand. So real quick, high level, there's a lot of benefits to doing foam rolling. What it's actually doing is moving the fascia tissue. So you're kind of smushing or smashing fascia tissue. It's a protective like casing, kind of wrapping that goes around your muscle fibers. And sometimes that tissue just gets really tight and rigid and just doesn't move as well as it should. So by rolling and going over that tissue repeatedly, it helps to move that tissue. It helps your muscle be able to lengthen and move, and that's going to benefit you in your physical activity. It's also going to just make you feel better after physical activity or after a long period of just sitting. So with that, it's great for you. It's a great thing to do before you stretch. It's a great thing to do after you work out, or again, just after a long day of work. So I'm gonna get into it. So I like to start everybody off on a softer foam roller. This is our easiest foam roller. You can see it's pretty squishy. We do have a medium level and then a really dense hard level. I find that most people can find a lot of productivity with a softer foam roller, and if it feels somewhat more pleasant, we're gonna do more of it. So again, start with the softer foam roller. All right, with that, we're gonna get into our first area of foam rolling. For a lot of people, they get really tight, even sore knee joints. And I'm gonna start out with just a little bit of pressure on our patellar tendon. That's the tendon that's in the front of the knee. And I'm gonna get started by kneeling down here, see if the camera can follow me. Awesome. Great. So what we're gonna gently do is just kneel onto this roller. Now, if this is painful, we don't wanna do it. It should be a very mild feeling, and I'm gonna show you what it looks like. We're just gonna kind of slowly put pressure into that front of the kneecap. Most of my knee is over the roller, and all we're gonna do is just kind of kneel and rock slowly into that roller. Again, why we start with the softer foam roller is this should be very mild. But this pressure just kind of helps free up the front of the knee, something that gets tight with walking. And this is very mild feeling. I get tightness in my knees, especially one that's had multiple knee surgeries. This is just kind of a great way to relax an area of my knee that's kind of tricky to get to. All right, next up, I am gonna get into my quads. I like to move from one position to the next in something that's just pretty fluid. So I'm gonna kneel right in front of my foam roller, put my arms out in front of me, and start just above my knees. Then I'm gonna do both my quads. All right, so I'm gonna foam roll into my quads just by laying onto the roller just above my knees. I'm doing both of these quads at the same time and just really slowly gliding my body across the roller. Kind of an army crawl situation here. You can even just kind of gently rock your hip to get to the outside of, right now I'm working the outside of my right quad. And that's an area that's a little bit tighter, so I'm just gonna spend a little bit more time. You can just stop, and if you find a really productive area of your muscle, you can just relax and just take a couple of deep breaths onto that area that feels really tight. And I'm gonna work to the other side. And it's really to your comfort level. We don't wanna stop and rest on a spot that's extremely painful. It should feel a little bit productive, and you may need to work to the outside of that really productive area and work your way closer into the more spicy feeling spot of your muscle. All right, next up, we're gonna work into our calf. This is an area that gets pretty tight for people in their sport and hobbies, just walking around. And what we're gonna do is just kind of rest your calf onto the roller, and then kind of use your body weight to press and lean your calf into that roller. And you're gonna go all the way up, just below the knee, and then all the way back down towards your ankle. You can rotate to get to the outside of the calf. Working all the way up, all the way back down. You can also kind of bend your knee to make it a little easier. The more of your weight that you're pressing into the foam roller, the more intense you're going to be getting into that fascia. You can rotate the other direction, work to the inside of that calf. And then you can do that same thing on the other calf. Into the outside. And that inside. Okay, so we can work on that upper part of the hamstring, but then actually make our way down into the main body or belly of the muscle of the hamstring by just leaning back and rolling our legs into the roller. This is pretty easy for me for my hamstrings, so I'm actually gonna lean one leg, so lift one leg, excuse me, and lean into the other leg to just make that rolling a little bit more intense into my hamstring on this side. Does take a little bit of stabilization with your shoulders, so you kind of need some healthy shoulders to hold you into this position. And you can see this on the other side, just lifting up the other leg to get into that hamstring. Now ideally you're spending 30 to 60 seconds rolling into this muscle group, but I am gonna move a little bit quickly here to just give you more and more ideas of things you can work on. The best part of having this foam roller in your own home is just kind of play around with it and see what feels good, and it's going to be different day to day depending on your activity level. All right, another one of my favorite things to foam roll is called your piriformis, and technically we're trying to stretch or open our hip a little bit. It's the back of your hip, and you're going to do this by lifting your left foot on top of your right knee. You're going to lean towards that left side, the leg that's bent, and you're gonna roll into this glute while you kind of pull your leg towards you. Now if this is way too intense, it's too big of a stretch, you can straighten the bottom leg and roll into it and work your way into where I'm at here. But the key, and it's easier to see with my leg up a little higher, is you're kind of rolling into the outer part of your hip. This is a really tight area. If people have ever tried a pigeon stretch, it's really challenging. So many large muscles have to move across your hip, and this is just an excellent opportunity to work all of these. I'm kind of actually getting into hamstring, glute, outer hip, and this is another one that you really want to play around with and find where you have that tension and just really spend some time on here. You might find an area that's very productive, and I'd recommend sticking around that area for like 30 seconds. Just doing some really gentle rolling. You can also let your hip kind of fall off the roller almost so you're just above the glute. It's not quite low back, but upper glute basically, really work in that area. So lots of opportunity from some spicy areas that again are just challenging areas of fascia that get really tight and stubborn, and it makes your movement in your hips less mobile. I'm gonna go ahead and just show you another angle by getting into the other side here. And I am tighter on this side. By rolling into this tissue in my upper glute, it actually makes my back feel a lot better. So this is one of the most often foam rolling techniques that I feel like I teach people that really makes a big difference when they have a tight, icky low back. All right. So now we're gonna work a little bit more outer hip again, but work our way down our IT band just above the knee. We're gonna do this by leaning onto our outer hip, Just using this other leg for stability. And I like to keep my bottom leg as straight as possible and really start on the more tissue, which for me is the outside of my hip. And then work our way down the leg. I've been running lately and this is very productive for me. I like to find the areas that are pretty intense feeling and just breathe into it. Do little rocks and then keep working. You can always come back to that area. We're gonna do that same thing on our other side. I like to start out on my hip, my leg over for stability. And then roll down the leg. For some reason, my right side is not as spicy as my other. Pretty easy here to get back into that quad by just leaning your hips forward. Kind of get to the outer by leaning my hips backward. Again, just kind of playing around where you find that tension or that more rigidness in the muscle, or fascia, excuse me. Okay. All right, we're gonna end with a low back foam rolling. I think this is just something that I like to do every day. So I did it in my last video, but we're gonna do it again here. And what we're gonna do is just kind of lay back, bend the knees up, and pop the hips up. And you're basically gonna be just above the glute, working our way into the low back here. It shouldn't be on your hip bone. There should actually be some meaty tissue because as I rotate my hips, you're gonna be rolling, having that foam roller work into this tissue. So you can kind of feel where there's some meat there, and that's where you want that roller to be. I'm gonna start with my back leg first, and all I'm gonna do is bend my knee in towards my chest. Should feel a little bit of stretch, maybe in my hip flexor. I'm also maybe even feeling a little bit of, movement or lack of pressure in my low back, because it should be able to really relax in this position. If the stretch is way too intense and we don't have that flexibility, you can also hold the back of the leg. And then what we're gonna do is just slowly keep both shoulders flat on the ground, but let this hip sway to let the leg start making its way towards my right side. Now, like I said, we're rolling, so we should feel some pressure of that foam roller into our low back, but you also could very likely feel a stretch in your outer glute, outer hip, maybe even your IT band if you're straightening your leg. And you're gonna breathe into this, just letting that low back relax. Up, and then do one more little quicker rotation. Awesome. One more pull of that knee, and then I'm just gonna switch legs. And keeping my shoulder flat on the ground. Let's let my hips rotate. Come back, one more pull of that knee. And rotate one last time. It just adjusted, which felt very great. All right, and come back up. Well, I hope you enjoyed all of these foam rolling techniques. Let me know how they feel, and if there's anything else you're wondering about foam rolling, just leave a comment below. Thanks, guys. Have a good day.